The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
We get plenty of Trump stuff on the regular show, but this is kind of an interesting story that doesn't really lend itself to a broadcast story, but that there's some interesting things to talk about. Donald Trump reportedly suggested during the 2016 campaign that Ivanka Trump run alongside him, that Ivanka Trump be his running mate. This is according to Rick Gates' latest book. And again, do we believe it? I have no reason to think Rick Gates would make up something so specific and so out there. I believe it. It may have not been considered seriously. It may have been something Trump said on a whim, and very quickly people disabused him of the idea. But what's super interesting to me about this, Pat, is that being from Argentina and having a history of relatives who were presidents and vice presidents over time, it's not like. It's outrageous that we might do that. And yet at the same time, it's not as crazy as it sounds to some people, because we went through this in Argentina for half a century.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the American context, it seems pretty crazy, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing similar to this is maybe JFK choosing his brother to be attorney general.
And
but
that's very
nothing
different,
like
yeah.
President, vice president, especially when you have someone like Ivanka who really wouldn't be qualified at all for the role. Like Trump wasn't qualified to be president. We know that now. But, he pointed to his business acumen to say that, I'm a successful business guy, therefore I can be president. Ivanka's claim to fame is that she's Trump's daughter. So, does that qualify her to be vice president? I would say no.
The story that Rick Gates tells is one where Trump was being pitched, I guess what you would call more reasonable options, but it's like, is Mike Pence really reasonable? But anyway, the idea was he was kind of resistant early because he had the idea of it being Ivanka, but eventually they did some polls. And the polls were not so good. And the polls, even among Republicans, were like, no, you shouldn't have your daughter as VP. They, of course, didn't say Trump is considering this. What do you think? It was just like a poll with a long list of people. And they consistently saw that Ivanka didn't poll well. Now, this being said, I genuinely think that if Donald Trump gets another 4 years, it actually could directly lead into a Trump child candidacy in 2024.
Well, they've passed around those memes, right, of Trump getting reelected and then maybe reelected to a third and fourth term.
Yeah.
And then it crosses over to John Jr. getting a term, and then Eric Trump getting a term, and Ivanka Trump getting a term. Like, which Trump kid do you think would be most likely to take over? Because I think they would all be competing for it.
I think it's Ivanka, honestly. I mean, I think Eric just isn't the smart one, and he's not that good in interviews and his public presence. And then it's Don Jr. or Ivanka. And for whatever reason, I feel like it would be more likely to be Ivanka. I hope I'm wrong overall. It's like, if it's going to be one of them, I don't know who I prefer, but that's my instinct.
Yeah, I get the sense that Ivanka is more likable than Don Jr., so she probably does have political aspirations. It'll be interesting to see if she ever decides to run. Now, if Trump loses, do they have the same weight? Like, does the Trump family, have that same power?
I
Not
believe
really.
they don't.
And
I
then they
believe
would have
that's
to come back
exactly
years
why
later.
there's so much riding on this election.
And another interesting thing from the story, too, was that apparently Trump decided to choose Mike Pence because Pence was able to go into this monologue about how the Clintons are so bad, which is interesting because, that's not even like a policy-based decision. It's not as if Trump was convinced that Mike Pence would be such a great vice president because of all the things he'd be able to handle. He was just able to attack Trump's opponent at the time, and that was enough for him.
That's exactly right. It's all completely pathetic. But I think the most serious element of all of this is, by removing Trump in January, but by voting in November, not only are you preventing 4 more years of Trump, you're significantly reducing the likelihood that a Trump child is a serious contender in the future. And I think that that's an important thing to do.
Yeah, I can't believe that. Maybe they will try. Maybe they will try something, but I don't think they're going to be able to get very far if Trump loses in November.
Here's an interesting activism story. Tyler Okeke is a 19-year-old activist, and his issue is reducing the voting age in the United States from 18 to 16. Now, this is something we've talked about before, and I feel like if, I was in debate class, I could really make a strong argument both ways. I could make a strong argument that, listen, you're able to join the military before you're 18 with parents' permission. You are able to drive before 18, I think in all states. Maybe there's some states where you have to be 18, but I think in all states. If we are recognizing these things, And as we know, adults who have no idea what's going on are allowed to vote. Why shouldn't a 16 or a 17-year-old who's interested enough to go vote? Remember, most 16-year-olds just won't do it because they're not interested. Most of the country doesn't vote in many elections. Only 55% vote in presidential typically. Why not allow them to do it? On the other hand, there's the argument that we're allowing kids to do some of these things too early. 17-year-olds shouldn't be allowed to join the military. Their brains are still underdeveloped at that time. 17-year-olds shouldn't be allowed to drive. The drinking age, the age to buy cigarettes should be raised to 21 everywhere, not just in some places. And we definitely should not allow 16-year-olds to vote. I feel like I could put together a case for both sides of this.
Yeah, I totally agree. And in favor of allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote, you also have the argument that they're able to work at that age. So if you're working, you're paying taxes on your income, right?
Right.
And if you can't vote, then that's sort of a taxation without representation thing going on. So yeah, I do agree with you that you can make a case on both sides. I just think that these things need to be consistent, right? Like, there's maybe should just be one age where you vote, where you can join the military, smoke, drink, drive even, all that stuff. It would just make things a lot easier if we
You're
just
an
picked one age
adult
and stuck
at
with
X
it.
age, and at this time you were granted all of these different things. But the thing is, then there's other ones. Like, for example, a lot of car rental companies won't rent to anyone under 25. Why? Well, we know that beyond 25, drivers become much safer. But that one is not tied to anything else that's legal. Those are sort of policies, and then that would raise other questions. By the way, I just saw an ad in looking at this story that is advertising that tomorrow on CNBC, the news with Shepard Smith starts. I had no idea that Shepard Smith, after leaving Fox News, had been hired. I missed this entire story. I guess Shep is going to be on CNBC starting tomorrow.
I saw a promo for it too. I didn't care all that much, I gotta say. I also saw Greta Van Sustren's off in some different network now. Like, I know she had a job at MSNBC for a little while. That must have not worked out. So they're really changing things up.
I don't know that I'm going to be watching Shep Smith too much on CNBC, but it's interesting nonetheless. Intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting has been sort of in vogue over the last few years. The idea is that you restrict your eating to a certain number of hours during the day, and that various health benefits are claimed. Some people, for example, eat nothing after 8 p.m., and then don't eat the next day until noon. So that's a 16-hour fast where you restrict all of your eating to an 8-hour period. And, there's all sorts of different combinations. The studies done so far that say there might be a benefit of this intermittent fasting have mostly been on mice and not on people. But there now is a study of 116 overweight people, and the study found no statistically significant difference in weight loss between those who restricted their eating to an 8-hour period every day and those who didn't. Now, it's important to say, even if it doesn't help you lose weight, it's at least theoretically possible that intermittent fasting could be healthy for other reasons, but that's not what this study was looking to rule in or out. And at least from the standpoint of weight loss, the intermittent fasting does not appear to help.
Yeah, so a few thoughts on this. One, I think it's kind of unfortunate that this is proven not to be all that effective, because it would be nice to know the answers for these things. Like, there are so many fad diets out there, and people try to come up with these hard and fast rules for what you should eat and when you should eat it. And if we don't know exactly what the rules are, what the most effective weight loss strategy is, then it's hard to advise people. So it's kind of unfortunate that it's debunked in a sense. But I also get the sense too that if you decide to do intermittent fasting, then you're also making a health conscious decision there. And so that's probably also coupled with you eating better. So you're able to show in a study when you have these double blind, control groups and all that stuff, how, it doesn't work doing the intermittent fasting alone, but it's probably mostly coupled with people also paying attention more so to what they're eating too. And that's why maybe they're seeing the benefits. This
is a very common thing in general with diets, which there's a sort of bias towards anybody who is following any kind of strict diet. It could be strict but unhealthy theoretically, or it could be strict but healthy. But the idea is if you're paying attention to what you're eating, you will often eat less or eat healthier things as a general thing. If you're on a particular diet, you might be living a healthier lifestyle in general, like exercising more. So you really want to say, we are taking people eating the same thing, the same number of calories. One group eats whenever they want. The other group condenses the eating into only 8 hours. That's the way you want to do it. And this is the case with a lot of these diets, South Beach diet, or for a while when it was Atkins, which caused other problems, but sometimes the from a calorie standpoint, or, even pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan, etc. To really test this stuff, you have to design these tests very thoughtfully because you need to eliminate the self-selection bias that you're pointing to.
Yeah, I think ultimately it does come down to calories in, calories out if you're talking about weight loss too. So like that's going to be like the major factor, and what you decide to eat is important too, but it's also like the composition of the foods. Have you ever tried anything like this? I mean, I've always suspected that like the Atkins diet, the blood type diet, all those types of things were just bogus. But for whatever reason, intermittent fasting, I don't know why I can't say that. Intermittent fasting seems like more effective to me. I don't know why.
I was never really sure. I mean, the one thing that the researchers did say is that the intermittent fasting can contribute to muscle loss. Like it could actually be bad. The idea being that if you are putting yourself, the ketogenic diet and those diets about ketones and they talk about putting your body in a state of ketosis and all this different stuff. It actually seems as though the intermittent fasting can make it when you're in a state of hunger that you could be losing muscle mass. That was one of the results from this test. It could actually be not so good.
Well, I definitely don't want to try it then. I can't afford to lose any muscle mass.
No.
So you got to keep that muscle on, got to keep the gains going. I'm not going to try this diet at this point then.
So, okay, tonight is the first presidential debate. There are still people emailing me saying Trump's going to bail because he's not going to want to face the heat on the taxes. I don't think Trump's going to bail for that reason. I don't know that there's going to be that much about taxes. What do you think?
About taxes? Yeah,
Trump's taxes.
Probably. Yeah, I think there'll be a question or two about it, probably towards the beginning.
We just lost Pat. Oh my God, Pat is gone. Pat's totally frozen, folks. Okay, now Pat is back.
And
Pat, we completely lost you there for a while. The last thing I heard was you saying there would be a question or two.
Yeah, there'll be a question or two about Trump's taxes. There'll be a question or two about the Supreme Court. The race has changed so significantly over the past week or two that you have to sort of include those things.
All right. What else are you watching for? I know you're very much looking forward to it.
I'm wondering. So I don't think that Joe Biden's going to collapse on stage. I think he's probably going to do just fine.
Yeah.
But we do know that he does tend to stutter. Sometimes he'll trip over his words. It's not like it's that unusual of a thing. But Trump being who he is, I wonder if Trump is going to bully him if that happens and how Biden would react to that. That's like what I'm looking out for. Like because we know Trump is going to go low. He went low during the 2016 debates. He's going to do that again. And I wonder if that's going to be something that he wants to attack and how that's going to play over.
And if he does, is Joe Biden prepared with a way to handle it? And if I were Joe Biden, I'm thinking out loud here, but if that were to happen, I might be ready to say, listen, this guy made fun of a disabled reporter. He's making fun of my stutter. This is not the guy that I might workshop something like that in debate prep and think about whether that should be the sort of standby if that were to happen.
Yeah, I bet the Biden campaign has to prepare their candidate more so on Trump's bully tactics than the actual policy matters, because we know that Biden knows policy. He's been in roles, in political roles for so long that he just knows this stuff in and out. But I think what he may be less prepared for is how to deal with Trump when Trump tries to bully him. So, assuming the campaign has prepped him on that sort of stuff, I think Biden's just going to do totally fine. And I never bought into this idea that Biden was going to pull out before the debate or Trump was going to pull out before the debate. Like, that just never seems convincing to me.
So in 2016, Donald Trump famously told Hillary Clinton that she'd be in jail if he was president or she'd be in prison. Trump has said that based on Biden and Obama having committed the greatest political crime in history, that each of them should be in prison for 50 years. Do you think during the debate, Trump will pull out this thing of you should be in prison?
Yeah, maybe. But the problem is he won't be able to articulate why that is.
Right.
Like sometimes Trump says treason is, the underlying crime of Obamagate, but that's also pretty hard to argue.
Well, the problem would be, what if Chris Wallace says, Mr. President, which exact crimes, what laws were broken? That would be a real problem for Trump.
Yeah, and then Trump would probably say, well, I don't want to go into that right now because, of course, Trump is so gracious. So, yeah, I really hope it doesn't go to that because, that's just such bottom level political discussion. Like, we're going to jail each other. We're not talking about healthcare policy or like these bigger issues. Certainly, there'll be some of those shenanigans, but I just hope they can keep it to a minimum because if they do that, that helps Biden.
Now, if Trump were to pull the Biden should be in prison, what if Biden were prepared to say, ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand this is a desperate man. And because he knows he may end up in prison if he doesn't get another 4 years, he will do anything he can to win, even if it means trying to force his way to stay in power. Like, Biden could go that route and say he's fighting to stay out of prison when he fights for re-election, but it's a risky strategy.
I think you should be preparing Biden because you pointed out how Biden can flip those attacks on its head. Like if Trump bullies Biden, then Biden can say, well, this guy bullied a disabled reporter and all that stuff. And then he can do that with this issue, too, if Trump says he wants to throw him in prison. Yeah. So I think, because Trump always projects, because he always contradicts himself, any sort of attack that he levies against Biden could theoretically turn it around on him. But if he's able to pull it off, that's a different question.
Yeah. I just made a note about this. I'm planning what I want to talk about in the pre-debate stream tonight. And this is maybe something I do want to talk about. How should Biden respond to what are some likely attacks from Donald Trump? So we'll be live tonight starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. I'm hoping for the biggest stream we've ever had. My recollection is the biggest stream I've had, adding up YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, has been about 45,000 live viewers. It was for just like a 15-minute period during one stream. I don't know if we're going to do that well. The one thing in our favor, Pat, is we scheduled the YouTube event for this stream days ago, and reportedly nearly 80% of voters plan to watch. If that's the case, you're talking about 100 million people watching tonight. It's not impossible that we could get 50,000 of that 100 million. So I'm hoping for the best for tonight.
Yeah, like if there's a Super Bowl of politics, I think that it's election night.
Yeah.
But this is like the AFC conference finals or something like that. And if
but
the
other thing is this
today,
is only 90 minutes. Election night is like hours and hours. You're conceivably condensing that audience into just 90 minutes.
Yeah, I do think that we have a good chance of doing it. And if we don't break the record today, then I think we can do it on election night, even though maybe that doesn't count because it's over a longer period of time. But I'm going to count it just the same.
Wow. All right. Well, join me tonight. I'll start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern with a pre-show for about a half hour. Then we'll have the debate. And then who knows? It depends how it goes. I'll see everybody later. Or if you're not going to be there, then we'll see you tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.